And in the season finale, the gospel comes over to the hotel room where Jack is being treated, and Susie tells him that it was all Freddie. So naturally, after leaving the hospital, the gospel and all of his men head over to Eddie's place. Before they can even do anything, though, they're seen by Jeff, who calls up Eddie. And when Eddie gets down there, he sees exactly what Jeff sees, which is the gospel praying with probably 10 guys. And he has no idea what the gospel is doing there. So he calls up Freddie, and Freddie also has no idea what the gospel is doing there. But it's pretty clear that the gospel didn't come to do a sermon. The gospel came for one reason and one reason only, and that's to extract revenge. Initially, because he's a man of principle, the gospel doesn't bum rush the house. He actually calls up Freddie, and he tells him, we can do this one of two ways. You come out or I'm coming in. While the gospel talks to Freddie, Susie is on the phone with her dad. When Bobby mentions Eddie, Susie says, don't worry about him. He sold us out, so I sold him out. And Bobby tells his daughter, you're about 24 hours late, so whatever you did, you better undo because I need his grace happy. And when Susie says, well, what I did was sell him out to the gospel, Bobby orders her to undo it immediately. It was a mistake. Susie realizes that she really messed this one up. So she calls up Eddie, who is walking back into the house, and she apologizes and says that the cavalry is on his way, which the cavalry is going to be Jimmy delivering a bunch of ammunition and guns so that they can defend themselves. This is a really, really tense situation. Eddie and his entire family gear up for what they feel like is going to be a war. But in the end, it was all for nothing because Bobby Glass took care of it. He calls up the gospel and tells them that if he just goes home, he'll make it up to him. And the gospel takes his offer. With the dust settled, Eddie and Susie end up going to meet with Bobby. Bobby tells both of them that after he cleaned up their mess, they owe him one. So what they're going to do is take bids on his business because he's done. He's out of the game. And he's going to sell it to the highest bidder. It's up to Susie and Eddie to go around and solicit those bids. As Susie and Eddie leave, Eddie confronts Susie on the fact that she just accepted what her dad said. It's pretty obvious that Susie wants his business, but she's willing to just not only not take it over, but go out and solicit bids. It makes no sense to him. And she tells him there's no point, because when the old man makes up his mind, it's done. And if he wants to sell, he's selling. There's no convincing him out of it. So there's no point of arguing. The only thing to do is just get these bids. What Eddie's concerned with is that if they sell off Bobby's business, whoever ends up buying it won't let Eddie out of the deal. So he really wants Susie to take this over because he feels like she will actually honor it. Susie, though, is steadfast. They just should do her dad's bidding and get it done with. And the first person they approach is Stanley Johnston. It's pretty clear that he wants the business. Stanley tells him that, yeah, he's really interested in the business, and he feels like he has a trump card because, quote, one of Susie's disgruntled staff leaked the other members of the consortium, and with that information, he now has the upper hand. But Eddie says, no, not quite. The list I gave your man was fake. All those numbers, they were cell phones that went to my family members. We played you. Stanley's not even that mad. He's just more impressed, and it means that he's going to have to really, really bid up if he wants the business. Now, the next person they go to is Mercy. They know that Mercy's customers, aka the cartel, would be very interested in the business. So she's definitely going to put in a bid. And then the final person they approach is Sticky Pete. He doesn't have any money, but he also has connections. So there's the three options. But Eddie, he's going to be the fourth option. After all, he's been getting told that he's born for this business, so might as well make a play for it. He alone, along with Susie, they don't have the money. They're going to have to get other parties interested. So what he wants to do is get those other 12 families together and go in on the deal. He's also going to get the travelers involved in this business. And even then, there's two problems. One, they're not going to be able to outbid Stanley Johnston. And two, they're going to need Susie Glass to run this business, and right now she's not interested in it. Susie and Eddie have done a complete 180 on the whole deal. For the longest time, it was Eddie who didn't want to be interested, and Susie wanted to be, and now it's the opposite. He approaches his mother to go have a conversation with Susie and maybe convince her to come back in on the deal. And then he gets a brilliant idea on how to get more money, and that's going to involve Henry Collins. While Susie's getting convinced that maybe she should go back in on the family business, Eddie sits down with Collins and explains that he can get him in on this deal. It's going to cost $15 million, and because of his penance that he's going to have to pay, he's going to have to do a little bit of dirty work. That's because Eddie plans on getting the other three people out of this deal. That means Mercy, Stanley Johnston, and Sticky Pete are gone. That's only going to leave one option for Bobby Glass, and that is Eddie. Collins, with no other options, he's in. And after a talk with Sabrina, Susie's been convinced to come back in. Collins is really the linchpin of Eddie's grand plan, because Eddie knows that the winning bid is going to be Stanley Johnston, so he needs to take him out. And the way to do that is through Thick Rick. Thick Rick is able to get Stanley Johnston's tax records and deliver them to the English equivalent of the IRS. So when Stanley Johnston wins that bid and he goes to pull the money out, he's arrested. The second winning bid was actually Mercy, but Eddie tells Mercy that it was Sticky Pete, knowing full well that Mercy, being a psychopath, would take Sticky Pete out, and that's exactly what she does. She butchers him to death in a parking lot. Then comes Henry Collins' penance. Once Mercy's done, Henry Collins pulls up and puts a bunch of shotgun shells in her. Now, all three options are done. And as for Collins, he delivers the $15 million as promised, but he's not in on the deal. No, Henry Collins went way too far. He was played. Jeff is waiting with a shotgun to his head, and they tie him up and wait to decide what they're going to do with him. And then, the only option, Susie and Eddie head to Bobby Glass and tell him that even though there are all those great bids, there's only one he can accept. But it turns out Collins wasn't the only one being played, so was Eddie and Susie. Because Bobby never had an interest in selling his business, he just wanted to wake his daughter up. Bobby has no plans on retiring. The bid that they're submitting is to invest in the business, not take it over. He did all of this because he wanted to know that they were actually committed to the mission. So the business will now be run by Bobby Glass, Eddie, and Susie. And now that they've patched things up, Eddie has a gift for Susie waiting for her in the woods. It's a tied-up Henry Collins. And once they leave Bobby's, that's exactly where they head. Susie, though, doesn't want to kill him. She actually offers it to Eddie. And Eddie decides to put him 6 feet in the dirt. But there's one wild card to all of this, and that is Stanley Johnston. Because when he was arrested, he was sent away to the same prison as Bobby Glass. And now the two are sitting there eating filet mignon, discussing business, because after all, they're roommates. And that is the end of The Gentleman Season 1. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a member. That'd be cool. I have like hats and t-shirts. You can buy that, and keep me above the poverty line. That'd be cool because I got bills to pay. Be nice in the comments section. Nasty comments make me feel bad, like everybody else. So if you don't like the video, just leave a thumbs down and just keep it moving. I'd appreciate that. And when Season 2 rolls around, I'll be here. Don't worry. But I sincerely thank you for getting this part of the recap and watching it and hopefully letting the ads run so I can stay above that poverty line that we discussed a little bit earlier.